So, day one of SQuINT 2016 here at the Hyatt Regency in Albuquerque. It is currently 8:08 in the morning, which is super early for me. I usually get to work sometime around 9. But thankfully, I was very forward thinking and brought a coffee thermos so that way we can consume all the caffeinated beverages that they will have provided for us. So, today's program is pretty intense. The conference officially gets started at 8:30 with some opening remarks and then runs all the way to approximately 7 p.m. at the end of the poster session. So today we're going to be talking a lot about, going to be talking about loophole-free bell tests and semiconductor quantum information processors and tomography, and some experimental results on semiconductor qubits. So we have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 10 talks today. And each talk is approximately a half hour to 45 minutes long. So there's going to be a lot of information that people are presenting, and we're just going to have to stay up with it. So what I've found is it's very helpful to kind of moderate yourself in going to talks and whatnot, and definitely taking breaks and just doing something else. The conference has a Twitter hashtag. One hashtag is SQuINT 2016, the other is SQuINT16. We're going to see if people somehow sort that one out. So yeah, it should be a very interesting day, and we will tell you more about it as it progresses. So we just got done with the first session, some really interesting work about loophole-free bell testing. So the first talk was from a guy at UT Delft discussing an actual experiment for how you could go about testing the bell inequality. And essentially, the bell inequality says that for a particular kind of game that can be played between two people, there are correlations. Well, actually, I should just say that if there's some way of notion of like scoring the game and how well the players are playing, and classically that score is bounded above by 2, and quantum mechanically it is bounded above by 2 times the square root of 2. And so a big question is, can you test whether or not when you set up that game you get correlations that are bigger than the classical correlations and yet still bounded by the quantum ones. So I guess Ronald Hansen from TU Delft was discussing an experiment in which they were able to demonstrate this Bell inequality violation, right? Essentially that the correlations are larger than the classical correlations at a pretty significant level. And later on in the sessions this morning, we're going to hear some about the data analysis that people use, because essentially what you want to be able to do is you want to be able to report if nature behaved in a particular way, what is the probability that we would have seen the numbers that we saw? This is called a p-value. And the p-value that they particularly report for their experiment as of July 2015 is 0.039, which in kind of like the parlance of people that do this null hypothesis significance testing, that would be significant at the 0.05 level, which is pretty cool. But I'm really concerned because I don't understand how those p-values are calculated, and I still lack a good idea of what exactly they mean. So we're going to have to listen to a few of the talks about the data analysis to really understand what was going on there. The second talk was about how you have to build random number generators in order to get this experiment started. And so you really have to make sure that the random number generation itself isn't affected by some of the problems that could affect the experiments. Or phrased another way, if there's problems with the random number generators in terms of depending upon hidden variables, or if there's other things, then the whole experiment doesn't work. And so you have to make sure that that random number generator works correctly. And so Morgan Mitchell gave a really good talk about how you can build these random number generation devices that actually satisfy all of the constraints for doing Bell inequality testing. And actually the devices that he built actually went into the experiments that were presented earlier this morning and will be presented later today. So right now we're in the middle of a break, so we're going to turn the camera around here. The conference is actually taking place across the way there, and this is just some sort of convenient little nook for recording videos and whatnot. So I need to go grab some coffee and see what else is up in the scientific world. Okay, so it is currently 4:55 p.m. We had a rather interesting lunch where I met up with some people and chatted about research that they were doing. And then I went to a session on semiconductor quantum information processing and tomography. and that had some interesting talks from a couple people that are doing experimental work in that regard, and actually building some silicon-based qubits, or building silicon-based qubits using quantum dots. And then I also heard a theoretical talk on tomography about how one should be more hesitant in using some tomographic techniques like randomized benchmarking. And then our very own Charlie Baldwin from SQuINT gave a talk about some work he's been doing on finding really useful measurement schemes that people can do that give you high accuracy in certain cases. So after that session, I was very, very tired. So I took a small break and actually came out and sat out here in order to just relax for a little bit and get some work done. I find that if you spend too much time listening to talks, or at least for me, if I spend too much time listening to talks, I get very exhausted, because I'm trying to take notes, I'm trying to pay attention, and I'm trying to keep up with what people are saying. And frankly, there's just a lot to be done. And I think it's better for me to pace myself and take my time and come out here, record this video and things like that, versus trying to go ahead and listen to all the talks. And then next month, I'll be going to Baltimore, Maryland for the American Physical Society March meeting. And that's an entire week's worth of conferencing where there are roughly 10-minute talks for people. So you can get very exhausted very quickly. So in a few minutes, what's going to happen is the current session is going to wind up, and then we're going to have the poster session. And at the poster session, people present their posters and talk about the work that they're doing. So it's really cool because you get a lot more one-on-one interaction with people versus in a talk where you have this time constraint. So as an audience member, you really can't stop and say, hey, let's go talk about this super in depth, because of the fact that they only have so much time for their talk. So at the poster session, what you're able to do is you're able to go ahead and actually just talk with people very much one-on-one and see what their research is really about and ask some good questions. I'm also very excited because last year at SQuINT, I gave a poster, and I found it very illuminating to have people come up and talk with me about my work and ask me hard questions about what I was doing. So hopefully we'll come up with some good questions for people in the poster session this evening. So thanks everyone for checking out that video about day 1 of SQuINT 2016. I did not record the poster session because I figured other people probably wouldn't appreciate having someone with a smartphone sitting there talking with them about their science. But overall, the poster session was really good. There was some great work that people were presenting and some really stimulating ideas that came out of that. So if you haven't checked it out, I made a video about day 0 of the conference, sort of the pre-conference day, as it were. And I'll put up a link to that here in the video. Also, I ended up giving a talk at SQuINT, and so I'll put up a link to that as well. As always, if you have comments or feedback about the videos, or just ideas in general, feel free to leave a comment below. Thanks.